Welcome back, public education advocates. It's the Ask Dr. B Good show, the show where we share the practice, the pedagogy, and the politics currently happening in public education. As always, I ask that you write your name in the comments when you come in and let me know your thoughts around the topic that's being discussed. You know, I'm a longtime teacher and I like an active classroom. So if you have questions, you have comments, put them in there and then I'll respond. If you happen to listen later, you can still put comments because I'll get notified and I'll respond as well. So let's get started. First, I want to announce the fact that we are going to change the format of the show a little bit as we continue to grow in this very sophisticated social media world that we all live in. What we have found out is that we need to maybe shorten the show a little bit and have it in segments. The reason for that is our ability to then put the segments on YouTube and let people hear the pieces they want to hear that interest them more. Or if they want to, or if you want to listen to the whole thing, then you can go to Spotify and listen to the whole thing. So as we mature into our podcast world, what we're learning is that you have different type of podcast listeners. You have the type of podcast listener that wants it chunked out, and then you have those who want to hear the whole thing. And so we're able now to get to the point, thanks to the JP, Kathy, and the Crew network, that we can meet both types of audiences like that. So we're going to do that. We're going to go to a half-hour show for the Ask Dr. Be Good show, and have usually three segments, 3 10-minute segments, and then encourage you to share it with your friends as well. The other thing that I want to announce is we're going to, I say we because it's not only me. Some of you know John Payton. He is sort of a Renaissance man, has his fingers in a lot of different pots, but he and I, in both of our free times, we are going to bring on a show called Saving the World Through Health and Wellness. Both of us have great interest in wellness and in what keeps people healthy, what makes people healthy, some of the new science around health and wellness. And that includes mental health and wellness. As we know, that has finally come into its own. It's finally become more mainstream to not only talk about mental health, but to actually get people to tap into the mental health resources and take advantage of them and not be embarrassed by that. It is finally getting to be okay to admit to oneself and others that you need mental health help. So those are some of the things that we'll be doing. We'll be tackling topics such as eating now for your health, actually years down the road, and how to eat healthier in today's fast-paced world. That that could be a whole show all by itself, right? Um, Type 2 diabetes and why it's called the silent killer. How some foods trigger inflammation in the body and what you can do about that. We also will be open to suggestions from the crew, and those of you who want us to tackle a certain health and wellness topic, we'll be happy to do that as well. So we have lots of opportunities to continue on the health and wellness journey together because it never ends, frankly. It never ends for a variety of reasons. One is the science gets more sophisticated around it. We keep learning more and more about really some of the things that are being put in foods that are triggering inflammation and actually leading us to be sick down the road. Um, we also know that when we continue to talk about it, it keeps it from slipping back here, right? So if you have some people that you trust and like hearing, hopefully that's John and myself, and once a week you are curious as to what topic we are going to bring to you on this, then we hope that it will make a difference that you're sharing in our journey of health and wellness together with us. So those are our plans going forward. So starting today, like I said, 30-minute show cut into 3 segments, and If you want to listen to the whole thing again or encourage your friends to listen to the whole thing, you go to Spotify. If you like one segment over another, or you know a friend who needs to listen to one of the segments because you know that that friend has a passion in that area, then you can lead them to the YouTube segment. So I hope that you will enjoy our ride together as we learn how to meet your needs better through not only the social media piece, but also through the topics that we bring you. So remember, Spotify for the whole thing, YouTube or Facebook. Um, well, YouTube for the segments, Facebook also for the whole thing. Now let's get to our next segment. Our next segment has to do with the best state rankings. And I'm a data person, as you all know, and I thought it would be a interesting use of time to talk about the ranking performance throughout all 50 states for 2021. How are these created? This is the U.S. World and News Report, so it's a pretty respected resource. And let's see. So how did they do that? They show us each of the 50 states and how they rank in 71 metrics across 8 different categories. And the data behind the rankings aims to show how well states serve their residents in a variety of ways. In calculating the rankings, each of the 8 categories was assigned weightings based on the average of 3 years of data from an annual national survey that's asked of 70,000 people to prioritize each subject in their state. And those 8 categories are healthcare, education, economy, infrastructure, opportunity, fiscal stability, crime and corrections, and natural environment. So I really, I wasn't surprised by a lot of what I saw, I guess because I've kept track of the rankings over time, but I'm going to pretty much focus on healthcare and education. So what states have good, strong healthcare that we know of, right? And nobody will be surprised. Hawaii not only has the best healthcare, by the way, but they have the best natural environment. Shock face. No surprise there, right? They are 27th in education. So, and I'm surprised actually that it's that high. I'd heard that Hawaii struggled with public ed over the past few years. So maybe they figured it out and starting to get a little bit better. But with healthcare, let's see, number 2 is Massachusetts, and number 3, Massachusetts is also number 2 with education, by the way. Number 3 is Connecticut, which is number 5 with education. Number 4, New Jersey, and this one caught me off guard. New Jersey is number 1 for education. And so number 4 is for healthcare. Number 5, the 5th ranked state is California. Okay, that doesn't surprise me. They are, however, 20th in education, public education. And number 6, Maryland, 14th in public ed. And let's see, number 7 is New York, the state of New York, which is 16th in education, and number 5 in natural environment. New York State, that's interesting. And number 8 is Washington State for healthcare, which is number 4 for education. And Utah, no, let's see, number 9. On this other side, yeah. Rhode Island, although is 9th for health, but 39th for education. That's interesting. And then 10th is Colorado, which is 5th for education. Now, some of these that probably don't surprise a lot of you. It is not unusual for us to see high or higher rankings for states up north, the Northeast. They put a lot more money in their public ed and oftentimes in their healthcare systems. So that really wasn't that surprising. What another surprise I had was New Hampshire, up north, was 13th in healthcare, 13th in education, and ranked first in crime and second in natural environment. Um, Massachusetts, second in healthcare, second in education, fourth in crime and correction, and fourth in natural environment. So I'm sort of surprised in the sense of these are very expensive states. Their standard of living is very high. They pay more in taxes. They have state income tax, and so the way we see those taxes used is in healthcare, in public education. I guess we're seeing it in the crime and corrections because they're fourth. They're ranked fourth. But a natural environment, I guess that's interesting too. They do have beautiful areas there and people who take care and protect their environment. Um, so how did our not so well ranking states do? Which one were those? Let's see now. In Texas, and many of us that listen to the show live in Texas, we are 31st in health, 34th in education, 37th in crime and corrections, and 40 in natural environment. And we're ranking 31st overall. But the last 10 states, so 40 to 50. Pennsylvania's 40, and it ranked 19th in health and 37th in public education, 17th in crime and correction, and 38th in natural environment. Kentucky, 44th in healthcare, 36th in public education, 17th in corrections, and 38th in natural environment. No, I'm sorry, 13th in crime and correction, and 29th in natural environment. Number 42, South Carolina, 34 in healthcare, 44 in public education. Crime and correction was terrible, 46, and 26 in natural education. So Oklahoma, 48 in health, so very bad as far as healthcare. 42, ranked 42nd in public ed, 44 in crime and corrections, and 34 in natural environment. Arkansas, 49th in health, 41st in public ed, 48th in crime and correction, and 30 in natural environment. Alaska was okay, better in health, ranked 22nd, 49th in public ed. Yikes. 49th in crime and correction, and 46 in natural environment. I would have thought that'd been better for Alaska. But Alaska's no Hawaii, right? Alabama, 45th in health, 47th in public ed, 43rd in crime and corrections, and 37th in natural environment. West Virginia, 47 in health, 45 in public ed, 23 in crime and correction, and 36 in natural environment. New Mexico, it's number 48 ranking, 33 in health, 50 in public education. Okay, New Mexico ranked the lowest in public ed, 47 crime and correction, and 31 in natural environment. Mississippi, 50 in health, 43 in education, 33 in crime and correction. That surprised me. I would have thought it'd be lower. 22 in natural environment. Interesting. In the very last ranked state, Louisiana, 46 in health, 48 in public education ranking, 50 in crime and corrections, and 49th in natural environment. Goodness gracious. So, unfortunately, at least from my standing, these are states, most of the states that are in the bottom 10 are states that I had read about and have been reading about for several years about their continued lack of being able to fund health care and public education well. So, um, different states have different priorities. And so, being able to count on our government to use our taxes in a prioritized way is important. And it, at least the data are showing me that that doesn't always happen in some of our states in the South, mostly. If you found this information interesting, share it with your friends. Remember, you can see it all on Spotify, or you can just hear this piece in on YouTube. You know, one of the things that I really work on this show is educating you all to understand what's happening not only in your state, but also the importance of knowing what's happening in at the federal level. When I was a teacher, and I was so guilty of this, when I was a teacher, and I was a teacher for 13 years, folks. I wasn't a short timer, I was a long timer before I started going up into administration. I never paid attention to what was happening at the federal level. All I cared about what was happening in my house and in my classroom, and probably in my school too sometime. Um, but I did not get and stay educated in the politics and the practices that were going on at the national level. So why should we do that, right? Why is that important? Well, it's important because that impacts us. That it impacts our school district, and ultimately it trickles down to the school and to the classroom as far as what funding we're going to get from the federal government, and um, what strings are being attached to that funding. And it's never been so important as it is now, when we have millions and really adds up to billions of dollars in federal funding for public education that is being given to us to try to mitigate the corona gap. So that's why I continue to bring you information at the federal level, so that you will start seeing the trends and patterns of what's happening at the federal level, and over time be able to speak on it pretty knowledgeably. That's my not so secret agenda for all you public ed advocates. So let's talk about what Michael Cardona, the Secretary of Education under Biden, is expecting all schools to do. So Cardona says that he wants all public schools to be open in the fall. Do you know that we still have some schools that really have not opened up full time? We have a variety of schools going, a different type of schooling going on right now. You have anything from pure virtual to hybrid to full face-to-face, no virtual. But what is he's saying is that everybody needs to go to the face-to-face, full-time, 5 days a week model, so that we can start really, really impacting kids again. So he even has said that if he finds school districts that are not going back full time, 5 days a week at the start of next year, he stands ready to increase the education department's oversight authority for those that do not. So, he wants all schools back so that all students have the opportunity to learn in person. And he wanted it for this spring. He didn't quite get it. He got more, but he does expect it for the fall. As it stands, about 80% of kids enrolled in school offer some sort of in-person learning. I'll go, like I said, though, it runs a gamut between full virtual to hybrid to full face-to-face, no hybrid. According to the most recent federal data, 60% of fourth graders and 69% of eighth graders who are still enrolled in remote learning, full-time or in a hybrid model, disappropriately affects students of color and low-income students in urban districts. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. It's a very complex issue to open schools in the middle of a pandemic, Cardona said, but there's no substitute for in-person learning. Every day that kids are not in school is a lost opportunity for social emotional connections, relationship building, academic support, all those things that we've talked about over the past year that kids need, especially at that middle school level, right? That's where those huge depression numbers are coming in. Cardona, who previously served as the education chief in Connecticut, pushed the majority of school districts in that state to reopen at the beginning of the school year. And he recently took that message on the road to his Help is Here school tour. He and President Joe Biden have been increasingly demanding that schools return to the classrooms, all students, even when it runs afoul of local teacher union wishes. Do everything you can to get the students in now. And so that's sort of interesting because, again, some of you have heard me talk about the adults being the problem when it comes to public education. It's not the kids, it's the adults. And we had adults who did not put kids first. They just didn't. Cardona also said that he believes that there's a role for increased federal oversight for school districts that fail to reopen fully for in-person learning, while acknowledging that the majority of the K-12 governance falls to states and local school districts. So he admits and he knows that school districts are run at the state level, not the federal level, but he is willing to pick up that stick, so to speak, and help with increased oversight if that's what it takes to get all districts back full time, face to face. While it's not the federal government's role to micromanage education, it's our role to make sure all children across the country are getting a free and appropriate public education, one where they have the opportunity to succeed in life. And that's true. He takes it very seriously. We take it very seriously here. And we hope that other adults are also taking it very seriously. So we know that Cardona now wants to have full-time school, and I caught the eye of something caught my eye that sort of blends with this. Matter of fact, he is mentioned in this article about angry white parents versus the public school system. So I'll give you a case study. We have Elizabeth Walsh, a Washington, D.C. mother of 3 school-age children who is determined not to become one of those wealthy white families that abandons urban education to become one of those wealthy white families that runs when the going gets tough. But with the vast majority of students still learning virtually in cities across the country, and upwards of 90% of the nation's capital kids, they're still virtual. She's hanging on by a thread. I don't want to generalize, but where we live, so many people have already gotten it in their head that they're going to go to private school and abandon their public ed environment. So here is a white parent who's really, really wanting to keep her kids in school, but the school's not opening. Her school in DC stayed closed for most of the school year. So she as a parent, and she's coming from an environment where houses cost $2 million. A good chunk of change, right? So Walsh says that she believes in the public school system. I want my kids to go there till 12th grade. I believe it's a better setting for them. They'll get a better college education. And I think what she means by that, they'll be better prepared for college and diversity and so forth if they go to their public ed school instead of a private school. But she's really having trouble with the fact that her public schools are staying closed. And so you have this interesting dilemma of white parents who want schools to open, kids of color parents who are keeping their kids at home. So let's see, it says right here, 87% of 4th grade students and 93% of 8th grade students in Washington were still learning remotely in March. And so she started getting angry. She started protesting, and So now they've opened up since March. Her children now get 2.5 hours a day of in-person instruction, 4 days a week at their neighborhood public school. And that began in mid-April. And school is going to be out, what, the end of May? What the public school has done for us is to show us that they are not necessarily going to be there for us, she said. And what private schools have shown people like us is no, no, you can pay us a lot of money and we're going to be there for you. Goodness gracious. That's, again, we talk about all the inequities. We're trying to, you know, get that gap narrowed between kids of color and white kids. And yet, this pandemic did not help things. So, I mean, she has a backup plan. She really, really wants her kids to go to a public school. So what she's saying is her backup plan is to go to their if her school in Washington D.C. doesn't open, they're going to then move to their Cape Cod house and go to the public school at their Cape Cod house. And so she doesn't want to do that, but um, here you have a white parent who's really, really serious about trying to keep her kids in public ed, and the public ed is not helping at least those parents. And it's not all white parents, but it's mostly white parents who want the kids to go face to face. So, with the latest federal data showing that less than 30% of elementary and middle school students in cities are receiving in person instruction full time, 5 days a week, Walsh is on the verge of joining a chorus of parents pulling the plug on urban school systems, a phenomenon that stands to financially handicap districts where enrollment is already down due to pandemic and further segregate children in cities where white students and students of color are already separated by boundaries and feeder patterns. So again, it's very frustrating, right? Because you have different philosophies of thought. You have parents who feel like their kids will only learn well, not only in a face-to-face setting, but in a public education setting, but they can't get their schools to open up, especially up north. A lot of it has to do with the unions. And then you have those parents who, on top of that, they're parents of kids of color who they're keeping their kids home because those are the communities that are being hit the hardest with COVID. And so it's been, yep.
I lost you.
You run out of juice?
I did. I said I had 7 minutes left when you were at 27:36 or 27:46. And it died. Are you running out to your grandkids right now?
No, not till, well, let me see what time. We have to be there at 5:50, I think. I think I just need a closing, don't I?
That's it. Yeah, that's where we're at. See, I thought we were going to make it because it said I'd have until 34 minutes into your podcast, and it didn't. It shut down at, like I said, 27:46. Yes, we're at the end, and so it was just the closing.
Yeah, I was just going to. So, should I film myself and you put it up as a finish? What?
We can do that, or anytime between now and the time I get home, and you get home, I can pop up Restream and we can do the finish.
Let me do my finish, and if it looks okay, we'll keep it. If not, I usually don't get home till like after 9. So let me just see what I can do. And then you just put it in as if it were a video, right?
Okay. Yeah, we should be able to do that.
Okay. Let me do that, and let me see. Let's see how it looks.
Sounds good. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Go home.
I'm going to go to the restroom, and then I'm heading home.
Okay. Talk soon.
All right. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Hmm. So we're having to finish this in a different way. Science is and social media is still an imperfect science. So let's see if we can finish this segment at least this way. And so just to round out the article, the pandemic is promoting another round of an old American story. That's where the public goods are scarce. When the public goods are scarce, the privileged are most always able to use their money or social capital to get the best version of what's available, said Connor Williams, fellow at the Century Foundation. And that's what's happening in Washington and other places around the country where uh, the latest example of parents with means, often white parents, who have for decades um, self segregated in the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city and in the surrounding suburbs, sort of figure it out faster than anybody else because they do have that money and social capital. So, again, the pandemic has caused us to see the shadows and to figure out the inequities, sometimes that have been there but not as visible. So, in some ways, it's good. It's good if we can act on it and do something about that. And that's our work, folks. Always trying to get us to stay equal, be equal, stay equal, and well, and science and technology is still sometimes um, something we have to figure out better. So we're going to end the show this way since the other way petered out on us. Let's see if we can finish the article. The pandemic is promoting another round of the old good old American story that when public goods are scarce, the privileged are almost always able to use their money and social capital to get the best version of what's available, said Connor Williams, fellow at the Century Foundation. That's what's happening in Washington. That's what's happening in districts across the country where we have families who are ready to face, families who are not ready to face because the communities have been hit so much harder. And so, the pandemic has it has hurt us, but it has also shown us where the shadows are, the inequity shadows, and it giving us the opportunity to fix those and to work on that. So let's focus on doing that so that we can all be more equitable together. We've reached the end of our show. We hope that you have come away with at least something to think about. And if you have any questions and comments, please make sure you put them in the comment section. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel, JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network, and We'll see you again next week. Thanks, everyone. And technology is still sometimes something we have to figure out better. So we're going to end the show this way since the other way petered out on us. Let's see if we can finish the article. The pandemic is promoting another round of the old, good old American story that when public goods are scarce, the privileged are almost always able to use their money and social capital to get the best version of what's available, said Connor Williams, fellow at the Century Foundation. That's what's happening in Washington.